Um, Welcome. This is a pleasure and honor for us to bring this presentation to everyone here. We'll take you through the evening in various steps, but I'm here just to kind of MC, to move us along throughout the night. So my name is Jason Gilmore. I'm an assistant professor of communication studies. I focus on global communication, and I worked with a couple of professors who I will introduce in just a second here on this project. But as happens, I have to give some thanks. So this project was actually funded for us to go to Brazil by an incredibly generous grant from the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Dean Allen, who is no longer around, well, I mean, he's still alive. He's, sorry. Pardon me, Dean Allen. He's now retired, but this was his brainchild, was to put together an experience for that was interdisciplinary, that professors would put together an idea, an experience to take students abroad, but that it would be a little bit different than your kind of traditional study abroad. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go through the evening. But again, I really want to give a shout out to CHAS, the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, for their support. Second is Utah Public Radio. So Utah Public Radio has been an amazing supporter of this, so much so they gave us space to record stories from the road. So many of you may be here tonight because you know of it through Utah Public Radio. And what we did is we created stories from a place called Salvador, Brazil. And that's where we're going to transport you to tonight. So some of you may know the kind of sounds of Salvador through the Utah Public Radio series that we did. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them and a thank you for giving us a platform for our voices and for the voices of the amazing people that we encountered down in Brazil. As always, I need to give a shout out to my beautiful and lovely wife, Saida, who, if you saw our posters around town, around the university, she designed them in like 30 minutes. It was spectacular and amazing to watch. She is an incredible talent and always supportive. Thank you very much. So I want to walk you through this evening, but I want to set the scene for where it is that we're going. So we want to take you to a place called Salvador. I'm guessing that the grand majority of you have never heard of Salvador, Brazil before tonight, or perhaps before you heard our radio series on Utah Public Radio. And so when we came up with the idea of taking students to Brazil in the year that was the Olympics year, it could have been easy for us to suggest that we were going to take them to Rio, right? That we would take them to these iconic places, perhaps Sao Paulo, but we wanted to go somewhere with a rich, deep, and complicated history. And so we chose Salvador. And Salvador, as you can see, is pretty spectacular to behold, but it is an incredibly complex space. And so the purpose of this experience was for 12 students and the 3 faculty members to go down to Brazil for 3 weeks, a little bit over 3 weeks, and to engage in a project-oriented experiential learning extravaganza. I don't even know what word to put in at the end, because we did more than you would imagine, or that we imagined was even possible. Our students took ownership and did amazing things throughout this experience. And as you will learn tonight throughout the individual stories of our students and how they interacted with the spaces of Salvador, you will get to know it more and more. So I don't want to spoil the show yet. So I'm just going to kind of seed that in, plant those seeds, and allow my students and our faculty members to allow to flower that, right, to bring that to fruition throughout the evening. throughout this experience, we engaged in a pretty robust social media experience, or a social media presence. And I want to bring these to your attention. So we used hashtags throughout. Our students were incredibly dynamic when it came to social media. And we had created USU Brazil. Ryan brought to our attention that we should be contributing to the Aggie experience, so we brought in USU Aggie Life. And then one of our students, Jay, who you will also meet tonight, started to kind of begin to have an identity of our group that was, this is more than study abroad. Now, I don't want to take anything away from study abroad. I studied abroad. It is an amazing experience, but it is a little bit different than what we engaged in. And you'll find out more about that tonight. And the one thing that I think this piece, as well as all of the other pieces that we have throughout this evening, throughout this university, and the idea of creating a culture on the USU campus that has to do with inclusion. This idea of bringing people into your group, not despite their differences, but because of their differences, right? That you bring people in, that you appreciate them, right? Because they are so fascinating, because those differences make our lives rich. And so seated in the philosophy of this this experience and this evening tonight is this idea that we include one another, that when we experience the world in diverse groups, that is how we get the richness of life. Right? Those are the moments when we understand the world differently than just the worldviews that we were given as we grow up. That we experience life through diverse groups. So the idea of creating an inclusive environment here at Utah State University is deeply important to us. So this hashtag of USU inclusion, hopefully, we started it last year and we've seen people use it, and now we want to encourage people to use it more. So if at some point in time you take a selfie, tweet, take a picture of people up here, please post it online, but use our hashtags. You don't have to use all of them, but I would definitely encourage you to use the USU inclusion. So as you walked in tonight, our students handed you a ribbon. Hold those up. Just hold them up. I know it's strange when people ask you to hold things up, raise hands. Okay. So as you will notice, we also have them on. And what has become incredibly iconic of Salvador, Brazil, are these ribbons. And so what we wanted to do tonight is to include you in our experience of what it's like to step into Salvador. Because when you step into downtown Salvador, it doesn't take long before somebody comes up to tie one of these around your wrist. But this is tied into a church in Salvador, a very famous church called Nosso Senhor do Bonfim. And it's just very iconic of Salvador. And the idea is that when you tie it, or when somebody ties it around your wrist, you have to leave it on until it finds its way off your wrist. And I have a student here tonight that has had his on for, I think, 3 or 4 months, and it still hasn't fallen off. But that when it finally falls off, the wishes that you make as you tie the knots come true. Right? So what I want you to do tonight is turn to somebody you know, maybe somebody you don't know, and I want you to tie these around each other's wrists. But here's the trick. You have to tie 3 knots. And the idea is that in each knot, you have a wish. Okay? So go ahead, find somebody to do this with. Meet a stranger. Remember, 3 knots. So I know a few people are finishing up the 3 knots, but I'll go ahead and move us forward. So what I would say right now is welcome to Salvador. It is upon us now to transport you into the spaces of Salvador, Brazil, and our experiences throughout. Oops, I had already moved it. We have 3 themes or kind of categories that we want to walk you through this evening, and this photograph actually, I think, embodies all 3. Our first theme is to take us into the setting of the scene. We want you to understand where it is, where you are, what it means to be in Salvador, what it looks like, what it feels like. And so this is a space, this is what Salvador looks like, right? Engaging, bringing people together. The second theme of this evening is about the people of Salvador. And this young lady right here, maybe young lady, is a former street kid. She was on the street from age 7 to 14. Right? She spent her childhood, those wonderful years that we like to play around, right? Not a care in the world. She was scrapping every single day for a life for 7 years until she was 14 years of age. And this amazing organization called Projeto Axé recruited her off the streets, and she has transformed herself with the help of Projeto Axé into an amazing individual who now runs, this is actually one of that organization's downtown centers. And her story would rock your world, as it did ours. So the second theme of this evening is the people of Brazil. The third theme of this evening centers around identity. This question of who you are, right? Who am I? And to go to a place that has such a complex space, that is a complex space, makes you think and challenges you to think twice about how you define yourself. Who are you as an individual? What is your existence and your relationship with the world? What are the benefits that you have that others don't? And what are the things that others have that you might be missing? So fundamental to this idea of learning about identity is that we went to Brazil not to teach them how to be more like us. We went for a reciprocal learning experience where both of our lives or all of our lives were enriched because we came together, because we engaged with people who were different from us. So these identity moments you will see throughout this evening. So you will see these stories throughout my students, one of whom is now going to come up and speak with you. So the stories will go throughout from student to student. Each one will give a new perspective and will tell you and make sure that you know that we're moving from theme to theme throughout the evening. So I want to welcome Ryan Jensen.
So I wanted to help and set the scene for you guys from at least my perspective of traveling to Salvador, Brazil, and keep in mind my background as well, coming from a small town of Utah in a desert. Part of the things that we went through, getting to our Pousada, our inn where we were staying as students, was traveling first from the airport through the city. You'd see the shopping malls and things like that, but as we arrived to where we were staying, we were in the historic part of town, and you would begin to see these colonial-styled buildings, original architecture, some worn down, not well kept, and the roofs collapsing in. and others have been transformed and well kept into restaurants and bars and gathering spaces. And our building was an inn for us to stay as students during this experience. Some of the cobblestone streets seemed more like a labyrinth winding around, some unkept, some up to date. But this was just a taste of what we were hit with as we first arrived. When we entered our Pausada, you began to see a clash of cultures, the original architecture from the colonial style that the Portuguese brought, but then the artwork with an Afro influence in the tapestries, the lampshades, the plants in the building, which is a really interesting thing and a fun space for us to explore just where we were sleeping and staying for this experience. As we explored the different neighborhoods and expanded throughout the city, we would be found with these over our heads during this festival time of the year. These triangle pennant banners from rooftop to rooftop down each alleyway in the plazas, and it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And the thing that tied all of these together, whether it was the buildings, the inside of with the artwork, or these banners because of the festivals going on, was the color. And that was the thing that really stood out to me, were the colors of Salvador, Brazil. It conveyed an excitement, a welcoming experience to visitors, and it was bright and happy. Once you have spent time there and you actually learn a little bit, something with the color that goes along with this is the colors of those bright buildings that are beautiful actually were used to help slaves identify how to return to their master or the home they belong to. So it's interesting to see that past with the ties of slavery and what they did represent, but what Salvador's turned it into today. And they own that, and it's a celebration. Lastly, one of the big things to take in were the churches and cathedrals and the beautiful masonry and brickwork and the enormous size of these and the work that went into those that were constructed. You could be in a single plaza and surrounded by up to 5 of these buildings. And you can see that religion is very important there in this community. But again, this also ties back a little bit to slavery and brings a different feeling that many of these buildings were constructed by the slaves. And there's actually an instance of a church built by the slaves for the slaves, and at that time it was located outside the main city walls. So that really speaks to us about what was represented at that time. But again, today, these buildings still stand, the colors are there, and it's a vibrant, welcoming community. And that was my experience in Salvador, Brazil, that I was welcomed as a visitor and embraced. To continue with setting the scene and bringing you guys along, we have Felicity Hughes that will present next. Thank you.
Traveling to Salvador, Brazil was a beautiful, impactful, life-shaping experience. But if I'm being entirely honest, it was hard. 3 days before I left for Brazil, my 12-year-old sister went under for brain surgery. And while we were there, she experienced a lot of complications due to that, which included another emergency surgery. During the first week that we were there, my phone was stolen. I don't speak any Portuguese, and I am a very independent person, but while we were there, I couldn't speak to anyone on my own. I couldn't conduct any of our research on my own. I couldn't even order food unless I could just point to it on a menu on my own. And this was incredibly hard and frustrating, and I found myself at moments saying, why am I even here? I gave up opportunities with work. I gave up opportunities with my family to be there, and it felt pointless at times, and I was frustrated. But in light of being entirely honest, I knew that I had to take a step back and realize that everyone has these moments when they go abroad. Everyone has moments when they feel far from home and far from everything they know. And I decided that I was going to find the good and the moments that I felt at home in Brazil. So the first experience that I was able to feel at home in Brazil was during our first week. We were walking as a group to the Pelourinho, which is the city center. And a group of people was trying to catch our attention. And as we turned to look, we saw that there was a band practicing inside of a church. And they ushered us inside and started to just play their music and sing and dance, and we got to experience this for just a few minutes. was something so simple, not a big deal at all, just singing and dancing. But that is Brazilian culture, singing and dancing and celebrating every chance you get. And it wasn't an experience that was planned so that we could experience the culture and interact with the local people. It was something that just happened because we were walking along the streets in Brazil, and that's what happens when you're in Brazil. And that was the first time I felt at home. About a week later, I was able to attend church in my own denomination with a few other students. And after the services were over, a family approached us and asked what our plans were for lunch. We told them that we didn't have any, and so they invited us over to their house and cooked us lunch. And we sat and talked with them about they showed us their wedding album. They showed us the places that they've traveled. They talked to us about the music that they liked. And we shared all of the ways that we are similar with each other. This is their 13-year-old daughter, Julia. She gave me those mini ears that I'm wearing because she thought I looked cute in them. And we formed this friendship. And that was the second time I was able to feel at home in Brazil. Before arriving to Brazil, I was very apprehensive that I wasn't going to be able to connect with people because of the levels of poverty that are all over Brazil that I didn't grow up with, because of the racism that saturates Brazil that I didn't grow up with. I was afraid that these things would keep me from connecting with people. But instead, what I discovered is that we are so much more similar than I ever imagined we would be, that I could find connections, that I could find home with these beautiful people, and they could teach me more than I ever imagined they would. Because no matter where you are in the world, but especially in Salvador, Brazil, and especially with these beautiful people, you can find home. To continue setting the stage, we'll now hear from Professor Francois Denga.
Okay, now it's time for the little lecture part of tonight. I need to give you guys just a little bit of historical background to give the context of some of the other student stories that will follow. Now, Salvador de Bahia is very unique because it's one of the first real multicultural cities within the Western Hemisphere. It was one of the very first places that became a melting pot for the various peoples of the world. After displacing the various indigenous peoples that called this part of Brazil home, the Portuguese founded Salvador de Bahia in 1549. The city actually occupies a small triangular peninsula right underneath the bulge of Brazil, right on the eastern coast of the bay, Bahia dos Todos os Santos, or the Bay of All Saints, then the peninsula separates the bay from the Atlantic Ocean. The city is actually built in two parts. There's the lower part of the city, which occupies the market, the port, commercial things like that. And about 230 feet straight up along the seaside cliffs is the upper city. And that's home to the civic, political, religious, and some of the more elite residential districts of Salvador. Now, due to Salvador's proximity, right on the edge of Brazil, to both Europe and Africa, it became a very important strategic center for the Portuguese Empire. And the Portuguese actually made Salvador the first capital of Brazil. Now, fueled by the sugarcane industry, Salvador unfortunately also became a center for the slave trade in the Western Hemisphere. Brazil alone accounts for about 40% of the slave trade that happened in the Americas. 40%, that's huge. That's about 5 million souls. And most of them were brought first to Salvador to be processed before being moved on to other parts in South America. Now, this legacy, as Ryan outlined, where's Ryan? Somewhere. Earlier, is evident all over Salvador. It's literally in the construction, in the paint, in the cobblestone walkways of the city. It's also in the city name. The historical center, it's called the Pelourinho. which is Portuguese for pillory or whipping post. The city center is called the whipping post. Think about that for a second. They named it after the name it carries to this day is a tool for the brutal and public punishment of other human beings. Because of this legacy of slavery, Bahia has become an important center of Afro-Brazilian heritage. The majority of the people who call Salvador home can trace their roots directly back to Africa. And that's because, like the rest of Brazil, it has experienced 500 years of miscegenation or interracial mixing. Unlike the US, which actually passed a whole series of laws to prevent this, to make interracial marriage illegal, there were no such bans in Brazil. So the people of Salvador, 52% identify as mixed race, and 28% identify as black. So it's a very multiracial society with very strong African roots. And so a lot of the cultural traditions that their ancestors brought over are still alive in Salvador to this day, but mixed, modified, changed over time to become something unique, something quintessentially Brazilian. For example, the religious system of Candomblé, which Jay will speak about in a little bit, is derived from African beliefs. The martial art form of capoeira came from Angolan martial arts, and the music of samba and the foods such as moqueca, which is a fish stew, and feijoada, which is a meat and bean stew, are all shaped by the African heritage of this people. Now, I want to focus on feijoada just for a second because it's delicious, but also how it signifies the people of Brazil and how it encapsulates a lot of their heritage and their identity. So, how many of you have actually had feijoada? I can barely see you. So some of you have. It's one of my favorite foods ever. It's bean stew, like I said, with various cuts of meat. It could be pork or beef. It's often served with rice and mandioca or tapioca flour called farofa. And the popular consensus is that this dish has its origins from the slaves, that this was a cheap, easy food to make. Beans were readily available, and the meats were usually the cast-off trimmings, such as the feet, the tails, organ meat that were seen as unfit for consumption within the plantation household. So, through the centuries, this dish has been associated with the poor, lower socioeconomic status peoples of Brazil. Sometime in the 20th century, this changed. This dish raised in prestige and became the national dish of Brazil so that it is the typical meal served on Sundays, and you can usually find it on the menus in most of the fancy restaurants. But more than that, it has come to symbolize the polyracial, interracial aspect of Brazilian society. So Brazilians point to the mixing of diverse tastes coming together to become something more than the constituent parts. And they make the metaphor that these foods actually represent the different colors of people who come together to mix, to share with one another, to become something more, to become something Brazilian. So they point to the red meat that signifies the indigenous people that were forcibly removed, enslaved by the European invaders. They point to the black beans, the 5 million African souls brought over on slave ships. They point to the white rice for the Europeans from the Iberian peninsula, particularly Portugal. So that together they mix to become something more, to become a new nation, to become Brazilian. And so the stories that you'll hear in this next section will explore some of the aspects of Brazilian peoples, Brazilian identity. And in exploring this aspect, we try to reflect a little bit on how our own cultures and identities are constructed as well. So now I'll hand it over to Mikhail, who has a photo essay on the faces of peoples in Salvador.
I really felt at home with the people in Brazil, and perhaps I felt connected to the African roots, which are humankind's roots, our birthplace and our original home. And I was kind of expecting these people to reflect the political and economic chaos that the country's going through right now, but I didn't find that. Instead I found warm, humble, generous souls who were completely willing to give us their precious time and words and share their love. And I was really grateful for the experience I had to capture some of these faces with my camera. And I've kind of put together a little slideshow of some of these portraits and hope that they can share their story with you.
Muitas vezes o coração não consegue compreender o que a mente não faz questão, nem tem forças para obedecer. Quantos sonhos já destruí e deixei escapar das mãos. Se o futuro assim permitir, não pretendo viver em vão. Meu amor, não estamos sós. Tem um mundo a esperar por nós. No infinito do céu azul, pode ter vida em Marte. Então vem cá, me dá sua língua. Então vem, eu quero abraçar você. Seu poder vem do sol, minha medida, meu bem. Vamos viver a vida. Então vem, senão eu vou perder quem sou. Vou querer me mudar para uma life on Mars. Muitas vezes o coração não consegue compreender o que a mente não faz questão, nem tem forças para obedecer. Quantos sonhos já destruí e deixei escapar das mãos. Se o futuro assim permitir, não pretendo viver em vão. Meu amor, não estamos sós. Tem um mundo a esperar por nós. O infinito do céu azul, pode ter vida em Marte. Então vem cá, me dá sua língua. Então vem, que eu quero abraçar você. Seu poder vem do sol, minha medida. Meu bem, vamos viver a vida. Então vem, senão eu vou perder quem sou. Vou querer me mudar para uma life on Mars. Muitas vezes o coração não consegue compreender o que a mente não faz questão, nem tem forças para obedecer. Quantos sonhos já destruí e deixei escapar das mãos. Se o futuro assim permitir, não pretendo viver em vão. Meu amor, não estamos sós, tem um mundo a esperar.
So next we will hear from Jairo, another student, who will continue along the theme of people in Salvador.
Thank you, Mateo. So, as Mikhail said, I'm Jairo. And for those who don't know, I'm from the Dominican Republic, a culture very similar to the Brazilian culture. Before I start telling my story, I would like to take you to this place. It is a very popular place in the area. Tourists can go there and buy many souvenirs if they want to. And my story starts as follows. One day, we decided to go downtown to collect some data on how people behave, how they interact with each other. And we were sitting in the back of this building. 15 minutes after we were taking notes on that, a lady approached us. And she started asking us questions about our postures, our diet. I was insecure being approached by a person that came out of nowhere. But I decided to give it a try because that was part of our mission, also interact with the people there. So she told me to stand up, and she grabbed my arm, and she started shaking it. She took the other one, shook it too. She told me to turn on my back, and she lifted me. I was not expecting that. And she is not that young, so I was a little bit concerned for her. But it was all right. She was fine. I was fine. Then she asked Liz, a girl that is going to be here sharing her story too, to do the same. She did it, probably because she saw I did it, and afterwards, I was fine. So she gave it a try. After she was done, she wanted to charge us for the service. I was not expecting that. They were not expecting it. But I decided to negotiate with her the price of the service. That day, at night, in the room of the hotel I was staying at, or the posada, I was thinking about that situation that day. And I was wondering, why do people do that? I thought of that question for like 10 minutes, and I came to the conclusion that some people prefer to do that instead going down the road of crime. Doesn't matter how hard their lives, or their society is, they are not gonna sacrifice their humility just because things are not going in a better way for them. And that's something I learned from the Brazilian people. Doesn't matter how hard things are. I'm gonna be the same person. I'm gonna be a good person, and I decide to be a good person. Thank you for your attention. Now I'm gonna pass it on Liz Thomas. She's gonna share more about the people of Brazil. Thank you so much.
This journey that we're taking you on began long before we even set foot in Brazil.
For over 6 months before we got there, we read books, watched documentaries, and we had discussions about race and class discrimination in Brazil. And as we did this, I formed a picture in my mind. I thought I knew exactly what it would be like to be there, how the people felt, what it looked like, how I'd feel. I thought I knew. And so I was surprised when I got off the plane, and I quickly realized that that's not at all how it was. I had expected to see a people downtrodden and miserable because of the situation they were in. And as you heard, that is not what Brazil is. The Brazilian people, and especially those of Salvador, are happy. They're joyous. They celebrated constantly while we were there, and they wanted us to celebrate with them. I thought I'd see issues between police officers and citizens because of the poverty. But I didn't see that either. What I saw is that I needed to do some thinking about who I thought these people were and what their story was. Because the reality of what was there was that this people of Salvador, these Bahian people, they have a story to tell and they want to tell it. And I was lucky enough to have the chance to hear it directly from them. I signed on to this journey as part of the ethnographic field school. We were going down to do research on how the Salvador people see race and class themselves. And so we did this in a couple of ways. First off, we did an oral interview where we asked them about their personal experiences. We asked them when they had experienced discrimination for whatever reason. And we asked them to tell us their stories. The other form of an interview that we did is called a pile sort, where we showed them a simple picture of a person and we asked what race they thought that person was. And then had them take all the pictures we had showed them and put them in their own piles of different races. And these methods of communication, as simple as they were with my limited Portuguese, broke down barriers immediately. And this is what helped me to understand what we were really seeing in Brazil. This family right here is the same family that Felicity met one of her good friends in. They took us in and helped us to overcome homesickness, and they knew we were there with a purpose. And so they helped us fulfill it. They made us the feijoada that Dr. Denga talked about, and they explained with pride how this dish came to be. They told us that, yes, it has a history from slavery, but that today it is a source of strength to them for what they've overcome. That people from all over the world come to experience the true feijoada. And they helped us to understand how they had experienced race and class. This other man over here, we found him on the Pelourinho. He sells things every day, whatever he can. He sells in the rain, in the sunshine, in the heat, whatever it is. And he sells because of his children, to take care of them. We met his children, and they were more than happy to run around with us for the rest of the day. And as we talked to him, just asking simple questions, we saw that this man who, before I'd gone to Brazil, I would have considered to be in a bad situation with his dark, dark skin and his pretty low economic status. But what I saw is that he still had joy, and he still took pride and had dignity in his life. And best of all for us, every time he saw us afterwards, he would run up to us and give us a big hug and ask us how we were doing. These people know what it's like to hit rock bottom, and they help everyone that they possibly can. And so as I went over the course of these 3 weeks, talking to people day after day, my mental image changed. These issues that I'd only considered as academic subjects and a way to gain research experience, plugging my data into a computer and pulling it back out, they changed to have a face, and not just one face, but faces and stories. These people gave me a reason to talk about race and class discrimination, not just in Brazil, but here in the United States too. And so I hope that as you look at all these pictures and hear the stories, I hope you search for faces as well. I hope that you see every person that you come in contact with as a way to move forward in your own life, as a strength. Because these people, I hope I did them some good, but we didn't go down to really do them a favor. We went down to learn from them, and what they taught me, I don't know how else I could have learned it. They taught it in a way that I could have never imagined, and I am so grateful for the opportunity that I had to meet them and to continue to find faces for the important issues. So now I'm going to pass the microphone to Jay, who had an incredible experience with some very important people in Salvador. Thank you.
All right, as Dr. Danga mentioned, I'm going to introduce you guys a little bit more to the religion of Candomblé. Candomblé is a religion that was brought over by the Africans who were forced out of their homes and brought to Brazil to be slaves. In this religion, they worship a panel of deities that each represent a different element or energy. Each congregation is set up like a family group. At the head is a Mai and Pai do Santo, or a mother and father of saints. And tonight, I would like you to come with me on my experience with one of these families. It began in a bright blue building in the middle of the Pelourinho. I studied the crosses the ancient spirit inside the Mai de Santo had traced on the inside of my wrist with flour. When the Mai de Santo is channeling the spirit, she speaks in an older form of Portuguese that was difficult even for Francia, a fluent Portuguese speaker, to understand. I look up and try to focus on Francia's cleansing across the room, but without my glasses, all I get from this is eye strain. I put my head in my hands. What am I doing here? The music thrums in the background as Francia is cleansed. I wait about 30 minutes before a young woman dressed in white approaches and leads me to the aisle between the room I was standing in and the room that Francia was being cleansed in. Francia, with a veil over her face, walks past, leaving behind the sweet smell of herbs. I take a deep breath and walk to the center of the circle they had created for me. Around me are big bowls full of staples of the local diet, such as corn, black-eyed peas, and grain. The Pai de Santo takes handfuls of each item and ceremoniously runs it over my body. I follow his lead throughout the ceremony. By the end, the Mai de Santo is lighting a cross made of gunpowder. I'm a bit dazed. As she puts out the spark that had been created by the cross, she tells me I have now been cleansed with fire and must too be cleansed with water. I'm led to the bathroom by the same young woman who'd brought me to the circle. She instructs me on how I should bathe and leaves me. I begin to wash myself with water, starting with my neck and then my arms. I finally have a moment to think. This ceremony has been so different from anything else I'd ever experienced. But that was okay. I begin to dry myself off. No, I wasn't comfortable, but it didn't really matter. I was here, and I looked out the door and saw the Mai de Santo dancing in a circle as her family sang around her. I smiled. Soon, I would be let out of the bathroom to become an honorary member of their religious family and Francia's sister. Next up, we're going to be talking about identity. And this will be introduced by Professor Marques Brasil.
This song helped me to calm down. This is not my natural element, lecture, so, and in English. Usually I think better and I talk better in Portuguese. So thank you, Jay, for what you did. When Jason talked to me, Jason was the first one to talk to me about this project 2.5 years ago. This is a 2.5 year in the making project. And when Jason talked to me, what I thought was, one, this is gonna be a lot of work. Two, what am I gonna do? Because I'm the only Brazilian in the group. And I teach literature with a critical theory background. The way I talk and the things I talk and the things I show are not necessarily pretty, right? Are not necessarily what we expect to hear from Brazil. I'm the biggest critic of Brazil. And then my challenge inside of this group was, what is going to be my role other than be the bodyguard of them? I'm the biggest. So not very successful in 2 occasions, but that's okay. I hope you forgive me. One, I was inside of the cab already. So, and then I started thinking about what would be my role. And what I mean by that is, if I go into my usual mode, the way I teach here, in the year I used to teach at the University of Minnesota, it would be, I would block their own experience, the experience that I want them to have in Brazil. And if I go into the other mode, about justifying every single calamity in Brazil, I would fall into the trap of naive nationalism. And I didn't want to do that either. So it was my identity challenge inside of this group. How I'm going to position myself in order not to silence their voice and their experience, or fall into the easy trap that the Brazilians do when they have to justify themselves to foreigners, which is fall into this naive nationalism in order to blind themselves and people about the challenges we face. So I decided to be in the background a little bit, as much as I could. I hope my colleagues, Jason and Francois, don't understand that position. And that's how I feel at the first time when I talk about, when Jason said that I should talk about identity here today. The other piece of that is, I'm not from Salvador. Let me show you where I'm from. Oh, this, by the way, this is a picture that Jason kindly did make when I was not seeing it. And he loves this picture, I don't know why, but he decided to put it there. He asked me for the picture, and I said, Jason, I trust you, you can pick one, and he picked this one. So I'm wondering, and this is good, because that's what I want to talk to you now, the second piece of the identity aspect related to me in this project. I'm not from Salvador. Things were new to me also. Although I lie a little bit when people ask where I'm from, I tell them that I'm from Salvador because I want to be from Salvador. I always wanted to be from Salvador. And because I could pass as Salvadorian, as from Salvador, I play with that, of course. But I'm from here. I'm from this state here. This is one of the poorest states in Brazil. It borders with Bahia, but it's far from Salvador. And Salvador, together with Recife and São Luís, those are the colonial cities in the northeast part of Brazil. They are very rich in culture, and they produce some of the most significant aspect of the Brazilian culture, especially Salvador, in music, in festivities. So Brazil was born in this part, for the good and for the bad. Every single piece of identity in Brazil relates to this region. To confirm it or to reject it. To confirm it in the sense that this is the birthplace of Brazil. We have some important roots there. We have a legacy that we need to think and we need to consider. But that's the poorest region of Brazil also. We have a lot of problems. So every single other region of Brazil has to relate to that. So you're going to find in Brazil some regions that don't want anything with that, don't want to identify with that. And you will find some regions and some people embracing it and understanding the importance of this region to the Brazilian consciousness, to the Brazilian identity, whatever it is, because there is 5 Brazil inside of Brazil. So when I think about how do I relate to this project and what impact it had on me, I think about many things, but most importantly, I don't want to do this by myself. If it wasn't for Jason and Francois, it would be very difficult. So we share the burden, we share the work. And the second thing is, by assuming the position of letting you guys live your experience, I was able to hear what you said and what you were saying today, which is beautiful. When I talked to Jason also about this, I said, Jason, I understand this project, but I will engage if this project is self-reflective. If this project will take these kids there and it will make them reflect not about them, but about themselves. Not about the other, but how they relate to the other to themselves. And I was lucky to hear that you guys are producing literature. Jay's piece is a beautiful piece of literature. And I thank you for that, because that's how I see this kind of experience. In 3 weeks, we cannot bring objective data, but we can bring this. We can bring what impact this kind of experience has on the way I think about myself and about the other. And you guys helped me to think about my position in relation to Salvador, in relation to the way I speak about Brazil. To be honest, listening to you, I'm much more generous about Brazil. I'm much more kind about Brazil. So you give me some hope, okay? Thank you for that. So to continue, we are going to hear Francia talking about also this identity aspect of her experience. Thank you.
Obrigada. Good evening, everyone. Well, as some of you know, my name is Francia Solis, and some of you know me as the girl who likes to dance, but tonight is about something different. So I want to share with you a small experience that I had in Brazil that just made me wonder a lot. So here it is. I'm walking to the Posada, to the hotel that we were staying at, and there is this gorgeous, beautiful black old lady who lived in front of the hotel. And I'm getting in and she says like, Nossa, mas como você se tá gata hoje? Which means, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful today. And I'm like, obrigada, viu? Like, thank you. And I just keep getting in. And then I get into the room, start talking to my roommates, and I'm like, wait a second. We've known already for 2 weeks. We've had conversations. Why are you calling me beautiful today? Like after 2 weeks, right? And then I just started thinking what happened before that, and I realized I was coming from the hair salon. And the reason why she called me beautiful And that was the only thing that I had different that day. It was my hair. I had it straight. In the Dominican Republic, if I go out like this, my mom, people in my family, my neighbors, they will be like, "Hey, Francia, are your hair brushes on a strike?" I know, it's funny, right? Until they say it to you. And it hurts your feelings. And it hurts your identity, who you are. Because it is part of me. This is how I was born. And unfortunately, there are so many stereotypes of beauty that I worked so hard to fit in that I just don't. And this is all related to race. Curly hair versus this beautiful straight hair that I don't have. Black people, African people, and people from African descent, like I am, don't have straight hair naturally. It's just not us. And sometimes there is these standards of beauty in men and female, both, of this perfect body, this 90, 60, 90 that I don't have. This blonde hair that I don't have. This light skin color that I don't have. And it hurts when people are telling you, well, if you want to look presentable for a job interview, you need to do your hair. Like if it's with my hair that I'm going to work. Like all the knowledge is here and not here. And I started wondering if any of you has felt this way before, with a small part of who you are. Embrace it. Because that's what makes you unique. That's what diversity is for, to embrace it. And if some of you need an example, Miss USU right here. Not white, not blonde, and not skinny. Thank you. And again, this happens to all of us, female and male. We all go through this. Women going through process, putting chemicals, products, wasting a lot of money to look beautiful. Isn't this beautiful? Right? So remember, whenever you feel society is telling you, no, you need to do this way, because this is the standard beauty, this is how it works. Be you, be yourself, embrace that. Because that's who you are, and that's perfectly beautiful. Thank you. And now, continuing with identities, let's have Jenny.
Can you hand this? No. All right, bonne noite. Good evening. My name is Jenny Budge, and I am white. I know, big surprise, right? I grew up in Logan, Utah, as part of the majority in almost every single way. In Brazil, I found myself no longer part of the majority in every single way. In faith, in body type, in language, in nationality, and yes, in race. But this shaped my experience in Brazil. I was no longer part of the invisible group, someone that you wouldn't notice walking down the street because I blend right in. I want to highlight a few experiences that I had in Brazil that helped me to realize my place in the minority as a visitor of Brazil. They were small and often went unnoticed by others in my group, others in the area that we were, but they reminded me of my visibility and my place in the minority in Brazil, and in particular in Salvador. The first was our second evening in Salvador. We were there in the month of June. Part of it was for the month of June, and during the Festa Junina, or the June Festival. And so we decided to experience the June Festival, and we went out that evening.
The air was warm, the cobblestone square was crowded. It was energetic, it was loud, it was foreign, and it was exciting. My hair was in a ponytail, my hair straight, slick. Compared to everyone else, I felt very different. And as we walked by a group of teenagers, I felt someone touch my ponytail, which wasn't a big deal. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't intimidating in any way, but it helped me to remember that I was different by my hair. A few weeks later, it was the Bahia Independence Day Parade. Pretty crowded and full of Salvadorians. It was warm, it was sunny, and we were standing and watching the parade go by. And a few feet away from us, there was a man with very dark skin. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he brought our arms together, and he motioned, not speaking a word, but touching our arms. And he smiled. And in that moment, I felt respected. But I remembered that I was different by my skin. At not any one moment, but at all moments, I felt analyzed, watched, and vulnerable, knowing that I stood out in so many ways, and those many ways meant different things to different people. But even being different in so many ways, by the end of our experience, I realized the significance of my visibility. Coming home, I became invisible again. Brazil made me feel, for a small moment and to a small degree, what it is like to be in the minority. Whether it meant something positive or negative to each person that we met, it did mean something, and I didn't realize how much it would until I was in Brazil. This is the family that we keep talking about, but Gustavo, the one taking the picture in the corner, is one of my new friends from Brazil. And I was speaking to him recently on Facebook. And I asked him what it was like to have a bunch of white Americans in their home, something that wasn't very common, that they did not see very often. And this is what he said. When you came, you showed me that the world doesn't revolve around Bahia or Brazil, but there exists different kinds of people in the world with different thoughts about the same questions. So to finish off our identity section, we will have Harleen finish it off for us.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Harleen, and today I want to talk to you about me, and you as well. Who am I? Who gets to decide what my identity is? Since it is my identity, does that mean that I have control over it? Who am I? That is a question that has been constantly in my mind, but Salvador Bahia, Brazil made it ring louder than ever in my ears. If I am in a place, if I am in a system where I can pass, where I look like the majority, then my identity is assumed. And that was my case in Brazil. As you have seen in some of the pictures and some of the video clips, I was like the majority there. But if I am in a system where I cannot pass, where I don't look like part of the majority, then guess what happens? My identity is still assumed. Brazil taught me how to turn to wonder. What is the identity I carry? Now, in those systems where my identity is assumed and I don't pass, I get this question: where are you from? And now I want each one of you to think about this for a moment. Where are you from? De onde você é? De donde eres? Picture the image in your mind and the scenario of where you have been asked this question. I usually get that question where I'm considered to be different, where I don't fit in very well, where I'm part of the minority. That might be also the case for you. But does the answer to that question say who you are? Does it even give a hint of your personality? Tell me where you come from and I'll tell you who you are. Is there such a thing? No. Where are you from is a question which asks for the name of a geographical location. Why is it important to know the name of the place or the location where I grew up? Is it important so that I can be given an identity based on the stereotypes of that area? If you are from Asia, should I assume that you like to eat rice and that you're very good at math? If you're from Mexico and you are now living in the US, should I assume that you or your family arrived illegally to the state? If you are from a Hispanic culture, should I assume that you like to eat hot, spicy food? And if you tell me that you are from Utah, should I assume that you are a Mormon? Brazil taught me a valuable lesson. Who am I? No matter how hard I try, I cannot control assumptions and stereotypes. Therefore, I am not who I say I am. Instead, I am what others think of me. Thank you.
So I just have a few final comments on the evening, and then we will let you go. The place that I want to spend a moment is on people. Specifically, I want to talk to you about my people. What does that mean to you? I mean this amazing group of people that went with me to Salvador, Brazil, and now you are in that family. You are in that beloved community. But I want to tell you one last thing about how amazing this group of students was as they walked through the streets of Brazil, the streets of Salvador. By the time we were done, people called out at them regularly in the streets. People came up and embraced them regularly. They were part of Salvador. They had become part of that place. And I just want them to know how incredibly proud we are of you. That was amazing. It's about you guys. This was all about you all. So thank you very much. And I think they did an amazing job. So can we give them a round of applause, please? The last thing I want to leave you with is a video that one of our students, Ryan Jensen, made. It's a quick 2-minute video that takes you through our experience.
Days when we fought till I was giving. Perfect disasters. We were reaching for the rafters. And most of the days we were searching for ways to get up and get out of the town we were raised, yeah, 'cause we were done. I remember we were sleeping in cars, we were searching for ours, we were burning cigars with the white plastic tips till we saw the sun. We said crazy things like, I refuse to look back thinking days were better just because of younger days. I don't know what's round the corner, where I feel right now, I swear will never change. Back when we were kids, we'll
here. That means you two as well. Caitlin, are you here? All right. This is the end of an experience for us, and maybe the beginning of new ones. But this is an example of what Utah State University has to provide to the world. And I think it's pretty darn amazing. Thank you all for coming out this evening.